In this walkthrough, we're going to go ahead and delete and remove activity records from the database. And we're going to go ahead and start by going to our activity repository and coming down here and adding a new method. This could be public int. It's going to return the number of rows deleted from the database. We're going to call this delete activity. And we can pass in an activity record to just go ahead and delete this, calling the init, and then going ahead and doing the connection.delete and passing in our activity record. That's the object we want to delete. Now we can certainly do that, but we want to take it one step further, and instead of using that particular method, we want to go ahead and call a method that's going to get an activity by ID and then go ahead and delete that, because we want to use a record here to get an individual activity, just to practice and get experience with trying to do that, because we've been doing that in some of our API calls. So in this case, we're going to use public activity. This is going to be called get activity. We're going to be passing in an ID value. This would be the activity ID that gets passed in. And we're calling the init method to do that and returning from our connection based off of our table and our model. We need to essentially perform a where using a lambda expression. And we want to check to see whether our a.activity ID is equal to our ID value that's passed in. So I hate this when this stupid dialog comes up here. Equals ID. Then we want to go ahead and get the first one. And we want to use the first or default, because if it can't find it, then it's going to return a null value. And that's going to take care of getting that record. Now we can come down, and if they're passing in an ID to the delete, so creating a new method, public int delete activity, this is going to be the one that we call. We're going to pass in an ID value, which is our activity ID. We need to first go ahead and get our activity before we try to delete the activity. So in our case, we're going to have essentially a result that we need to return. We'll set that equal to 0, and then we can go ahead and return result. That's going to satisfy everything. Then I can go ahead and do my init to get my database connection. Then go ahead and get my activity based off of my new method that I just added, the get activity, passing in the ID that we retrieve from an input argument. And if my activity is not equal to null, then I'm going to go ahead and attempt to delete that using the con.delete. And in this case, I can remove my activity. Just a little bit of difference on how we can do that, but in this case, we can see that we're getting that second one. We can apply a where clause and get the first or default. So that's a little bit different there. Now that we have those methods actually coded, we can go ahead and implement this. And to do this, we are going to go ahead and grab some code. Coming back to our code page, we're going to essentially copy this in. This is going to be where we're adding a flyout context menu. We're going to go to, for our add activity, so the list in here, we have a number of grids. We're going to pretty much put this before the ending grid down here. Go ahead and generate. Let's scroll this way. Maybe then if I can double click that, and it's going to generate the code behind method for it. Now we can go ahead and hook all this up. We've seen before that we can essentially get the sender and convert it into the menu flyout item. So this is going to be var item is equal to sender. And we're going to cast that as menu flyout item. If that item is null, then we just want to go ahead and return. If it's not, then we want to go ahead and get the binding context from that item. So this is going to be var activity is equal to our item.binding context. That's what we bound to it. And this is going to be an activity. We're going to cast it as that. And if our activity is null, then we want to return. Otherwise, we have an instance of our activity, and we can simply call one of our delete methods. Doesn't really matter which one. We have the object. We also have our activity ID for that object. We can go ahead and do the activity repo.delete activity. And in this case, let's use the activity ID to pass through and do it where we're getting that record back from the database and then using that as the object that gets deleted, just to test out a little bit more functionality. We could certainly send in the activity as well. Now in this case, after we do that delete, we need to refresh our activity list so that we can show it, because we've removed something, and if we don't refresh our observable collection, that activities that has that activity list that we've gone out and retrieved from the database, it's going to show a record that doesn't exist. So we need to go ahead and do the activity list and set it equal to the app.activityrepo.getAllActivities. Now we have that list updated. We can go ahead and set our activities equal to a new observable collection and pass in the activity list. And that should refresh the list. It should show that we have deleted and removed the record instead of showing us something that has been deleted. So that should keep things in sync. So we can go ahead and stop if we're still running debug from the last session and go ahead and try out our delete function. So now we have our screen going to our list activity. Let's go ahead and delete one of the ones that we had down at the bottom. And if we delete that, we should no longer see that walking. We should see the running. And we should see that now if we go into our home, that we have 6 activities and not 7. So that's the walkthrough for the delete. We are done with lab L01. Go ahead and zip up your solution and submit it for grading before you continue on in the next lab.